Hey guys, this is a quick lesson on adding and subtracting integers. This is typically a 7th grade standard. When we talk about adding and subtracting integers, we're talking about integers along, typically what you see along the number line. Okay, I call them like whole numbers, but they could be negative, or they could be positive. And sometimes the book would show you counters or using the number line to model what goes on and what takes place when you're adding and subtracting integers. And we could do that here. If, for example, let's say that we wanted to take a -2 and add, let's say, a 5 to it. You would start at the -2, which is right here. And then you would go 5 places to the right. When you add 5, you go 5 places to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then wherever you end up is going to be your answer. Now there's nothing wrong with this. It's actually pretty good to model and practice. But eventually you get to a point where you get numbers that may be quite far off on the number line and be very difficult to do. So there's some basic rules that go along with adding and subtracting integers. And these are the basic rules that I want to share with you now. If we're adding integers of the same sign, such as -20 plus -4, or even +20 plus +4, we keep the sign. Now both of these are positive. You could put a positive symbol in front of those, but nothing's really going to change. For a negative, you want that negative up front. Okay, if there's not a negative up front, then it's understood to be a +20. So you want to make sure you have that negative if it is a negative. So when you have, again, when you have the same sign, you keep the sign and then just add the numbers together. Okay. Now, the issue never really comes here. Most students don't have an issue with adding integers or of the same sign. This is typically a pretty easy lesson. What becomes an issue really is when they start adding integers of different signs. So like, for example, 5 plus, let's do this one like on top, 5 plus -2. We can't add those numbers together because they're different integers. They're different. They have different signs. And so what you're going to have to end up doing is trying to find the difference because the signs are different. Find the difference and go with the sign of the one that has more absolute value, which I say typically the one that has more weight to it. So 5 plus -2 is 3. And how do we know that? Well, if we start at 5, and then when I add a -2, instead of going to the right 2, I'm going to go left 2. 1, 2. And you can see that we end up at the same place, at 3. If we had another number, let's do another number, like -10 plus 7. Okay? If we have a negative and a positive, we can't add those together. We have to find the difference between the two. The difference is 3. And then you go and then you use the sign of the number that has more absolute value. So does this -10 have more weight or more absolute value than the 7? It does. It's further away from 0, so it's going to have a bit more weight. It doesn't mean that -10 is greater than 7. If I were to compare them over here, like if I said, which one's greater, -10 or 7? Well, -10 is going to be less than 7, okay? Comparatively speaking. A negative is always going to be less than a positive, always, no matter what. However, when we're talking about absolute value, like the weight of it, this is going to have more weight. So use the sign of that number. Okay, another way of thinking about it is this. Let's say you come in, you owe me $10. And you come walk in my class and you have $7 in your pocket. Okay, if you give me the 7 that you partially owe me, obviously you don't have enough to pay off the debt of $10. You still owe me $3. So hopefully that makes sense to you of using this or pretending this is like a money issue. All right. Moving on a little bit, let's do a couple more. Let's say instead of adding integers of different signs, let's talk about subtracting. If I have, let's say I have a -5 minus 3. So on the number line, let me see if I can model this on the number line. Sorry, it's not quite right on the line there. So let's say this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. -5's right here. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. -10's right here. Okay. Then you get your positives over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So if we were to start with -5 and we were to subtract 3 or add -3, so this basically means the same thing as -5 plus -3. Okay. They look like different problems, but basically the same thing. When you subtract 3 from -5, you're going further deeper into debt, or into a hole, if you will. If I had dug 5 feet and you were to tell me, hey, you need to dig 3 more feet, well, I'd be much deeper. So here you start -5, then you go left 3 places. 1, 2, 3. You end up at -8. Okay, just like -5 plus -3, keep the sign, same sign, -8. So either problem is going to get you -8. So when you subtract from a negative, just remember, you get a bigger negative, if you will. And then one last example. And this one's typically the hardest of all of them. Let's say I have a problem like this. Let's say I have -5 minus -3. When you have a negative, when you have 2 negatives in a row, they're going to counter each other. Okay, it's much like saying, don't talk. If I say don't talk, that means talk, right? So if you have 2 no's, don't something, that means do that thing that I just told you not to do. So when you have a double negative like that, it basically creates a positive. Okay. So what I typically do with when you have a negative, I don't even focus on the first integer. The first integer really has nothing to do with what we need to focus on here. The negative, when you see that, just rewrite the problem. Put plus, so erase space. You can either erase both of them if you can, or rewrite the problem as +3. And then your first integer is -5. And then just solve it like you normally would have, like maybe up here, something like that. So -5 plus 3, well, you can't add those, 2 different signs. So you want to find the difference. And then you use the sign of the one that has more absolute value. This has more absolute value, more weight to it. So you use that sign, that's a negative. So this is going to be a -2. Okay. And if you want to if you want to model it up here, you start at -5, and you go 3 places to the right, 1, 2, 3, and you end up at -2. All right. Let's do one more. Let's say I have 35 minus -4. Okay, so same thing. You have a double negative. You basically have a minus negative, or minus, if you will. Both of those are going to counter each other. It's going to create a positive. So it's +4, and you bring down your first integer, and that's your problem. So your answer is going to be 39. Okay, hopefully this helps. If you'd like more examples, or if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I will get back with you. God bless, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.